Welcome back. The Jordan Rich Show coming to you live, of course, throughout the entire nation on WBZ and WCCO and CBS.com. And it's great to join you through the night with interesting people, and particularly for me, this is a pleasure because I get to talk to people I'm big fans of. Last year, we met Karen Kondazian. She is the author of an amazing story that nobody around here knew about until she wrote about it, called The Whip, based on a true story of Charlotte, a.k.a. Charlie Parkhurst, who was a woman in the Old West who spent 30 years living a life as a man. And I know it sounds like a made-up story, but it's the real thing. And now it's an audiobook, and who better to read that than one of the best actresses on the planet, and she's the person I had in mind when I was reading the book. Robin Weigert is on the line. Robin, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And I hope you don't mind that when I was talking with Karen a year ago, it kept flashing. I might even mention to her that this character reminds me of somebody that one of my favorite actresses plays on Deadwood.
You may very well have gotten me a job then, because
maybe.
I think that's probably one of the reasons she sought me out. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do the book. It was really it was the first audiobook I've ever done, and I'd never had the experience of trying to manage so many characters in such a short span of time, and it's really quite an exercise. I liked it a lot.
Well, for somebody like you with such a diverse acting background, and we're going to talk about that, you've been on Broadway, you've won awards, you've been in television and movies. To do an audiobook, you're right, you're all it. Every special effect, that's all coming out of you.
You are all it. That's very well said. It's funny because I realized in doing it that it has a lot more in common in some ways with being a director than being an actor, because you're managing the entire scenario. You're painting the scenery, even in a sense, because you're doing all the descriptive passages too, and you're really responsible for the way the audience receives the entire journey. And it's a much bigger undertaking. And of course, I was working with Bob Dean, whose studio it was, and he was coaching me through it. But as far as just weaving a tale, I'd never had that challenge before, and it was really fun.
Yeah. And was this a tale that you had any knowledge of prior to finding out about this book?
I didn't know about Charlie Parkhurst in specific, but I did know, and I learned more after working with Karen, that there were women, more than we know about, who were sort of getting away with this in the Old West, and it was one of only a handful of ways to survive was to sort of go undercover in this way, and it was not as uncommon as one would think, because what really were you to do if you had no husband and didn't want to become a prostitute? And there were not that many avenues open to women in those days, so not everybody could do it as successfully. But wasn't there a film not so very long ago that Glenn Close was in? I'm trying to remember the name of it now.
Yeah, she played. She posed as a man. True story, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sounds bizarre to even think about it, that it could work, that this woman back in the Old West could pass herself off, but she did. And I think, according to Karen's book, she was the first woman, quote-unquote woman, to actually vote in a U.S. election. But they didn't know she was a woman.
I suppose it has to count. It was done, in a sense, by sleight of hand, because she was voting as if she were a man. But she may very well have been the first woman who got away with it. So yes, it puts her in an interesting historical place, having broken through before others did, I guess you could say.
The book, by the way, we're talking about now is out as an audiobook. It's called The Whip. It's available at audible.com. It's written by Karen Kondazian, and I'm speaking with Robin Weigert, who is one of the finest actresses out there. And I guess it's a testament to you, that you're such a well-known commodity in the business, but you're not perhaps a well-known name because you blend in to the roles you take to the point where we don't even know it's you after a while.
Well, I guess that's one of the great pleasures of acting for me. But it is in a funny way a liability. You're right, because you're not as easily pinpointed, and then it's not as if every time a certain part comes up, people go, you know who needs to play that? So and so. It does make it. You sort of have to reprove yourself every time in a funny kind of way. So,
well, the casting that was done for Deadwood, I just finished the series about a year ago, and I watched it day to day.
late.
I came to it late, and I just, for time purposes, it's nice with the DVR and stuff. But I'll tell you, for my money, you just absolutely own that part of Calamity Jane. And I guess the question is, there is a lot of historical reference to her and to how she acted and how she dressed and all that. But obviously you had to bring something more to that role. And what you brought was a powerhouse, my dear.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for all the praise. It's so lovely. It was a total treat to get to play that part, but also to work in that environment. I mean, it really, actors are as good as the work environment which they're allowed to play, and it was such a perfect scenario. I mean, it was an incredible ensemble of people, and David Milch and the whole writing team were sort of brilliant, and it was really just about as good as it could get in working in television, and I was very spoiled by it, actually. It was really wonderful. The
physicality, though, was, you obviously knew how to handle a gun, and you were very rugged, and,
I tell you how many times, I had to train myself in a couple things and get trained in a couple things, and, and then you do some bluffing, and then, of course, you get to be drunk half the time, so if you do something ineptly, nobody knows it, but I had a prop gun that I practiced twirling over and over and over again in my backyard, and I think I dropped it on my foot a half a dozen times. Just trying to seem like somebody who'd handled that all her life. But
the thing about that show, really, even though there was a lot of action and events happening, and I know you're a stage actress, true and true, it really aired like a theatrical performance. I mean, there were speeches and monologues, and Ian McShane would just hold court. I mean, it was almost Shakespearean in nature.
Right. Well, David's argot, his language he uses is so rich and so sort of delicious. There's such a music to it, and that's also rare for television. It's rare for anything that somebody has such a developed sort of style, and it was such a pleasure to chew on that language. As profane as it could be, it was also absolutely gorgeous at times. I mean, some of those. There was the preacher in it had a speech that included a biblical passage that said, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be lifted up." And I went up to David and I said, "David, that was a particularly inspired piece of writing." And he said, "That's actually the Bible." That's how elevated it was at times. I mean, his use of language was just gorgeous, and so. That doesn't come around very often in a lifetime. Really...
Did you have to, at any point in playing that role of Calamity Jane on Deadwood, did you have to explain to family members or people who had known you as such a prolific actress, hey, by the way, the language is a little salty?
It's a little salty. Well, I'll tell you what was a very funny little anecdote. My grandfather, who was just my favorite guy on the planet, he was a very dignified man, and he lived in New York, and he was a member of a sort of fancy club there that he liked to spend time at. And he wanted bragging rights when I got an Emmy nomination. Of course he did, because he's my grandfather. And so he went to his club, and he said, "My granddaughter, Emmy nomination." And his friends there would say, "Oh, really? What was it for?" And he said, "Well, I can't quite recall the name."
Yeah, a little embarrassed.
And, because I don't think he actually wanted them tuning in, because he couldn't believe the profanity. He couldn't believe the profanity. But he was always such a supporter of my work.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice. I'm talking here with Robin Weigert, who is an accomplished stage and screen actress. She is doing the audio version of a book we talked about at length last year, and we loved it. We heralded it. It's called The Whip, based on the true story of Charlie Parkhurst, an actual lady spending many, many years living a life as a man in the Old West. And it's a great read. Karen Kondazian is a terrific author, and she had so much passion for this, and I can tell you do too. And the book is available at audible.com. And it wouldn't be fair to not talk about some of the other things you're doing, including a role that I saw, that many people saw, became a word-of-mouth hit, and it's a beautiful film called Sessions. And you reteamed with John Hawkes, who was in Deadwood. And boy, I'll tell you, what a beautiful, beautiful piece that movie is. And then when you come in at the end, you've got a delightful role. You come in towards the end of the film, but it's a pivotal one.
Yeah, and I loved the character. I mean, she's based on, as they all are, a real woman who I got to speak with only on the phone before I embodied her. But she has such a beautiful spirit, and It was such a sort of an honor to get to play her, but and also to work with John, who I just adore. I mean, my God, talk about versatility and
man, what a performance! Should have been nominated, should have won.
Well,
something.
He did get all sorts of decorations for that part, Independent Spirit Awards and all sorts of things. But you're right. I felt that way too. I felt like it was really one of the seminal performances. But these things are not exactly done democratically. I mean, I think there's a kind of a status game played at every level, and what's great is John, with this part, and some others that preceded it, but really with this one, has totally broken through, and he's at a very different level now in terms of what he's being offered and what he's being considered for, and I think it's fantastic, and it's also sort of inspiring to know it can happen at any point in a career. Because he's been doing this for quite some time, and always really brilliantly, but sort of as a supporting character actor. But yeah, that was a treat, and there's actually a film coming out in the fall that people will have a chance to see that I should speak about, which was at Sundance this year.
Concussion, right? Yeah.
And it's called Concussion. Yeah. And that will be released, I think, in October. And
in that, you take on another kind of character role, which is very, very. Want to just tell us a little bit about that? Because I've been reading some of the reviews; they're fabulous. Go ahead, tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was really amazed by how well received it was. It's something that scared me a lot, taking it on, and I therefore felt very vulnerable to what the critical response would be. If it had been slammed, I would have really felt a lot of pain over it because it was a very sort of, in every sense of the word, revealing sort of a journey to play a character like this, she's in a crisis in her marriage, and she their sex life has sort of died on the vine, as people's do, and she starts to turn tricks. So and it of course begs comparison to the Catherine Deneuve movie Belle de Jour, but it's a very different spin on that, and really it's a movie that has a lot to do with marriage. It's a very recognizable situation with a very unconventional solution, but I think anybody who's been in a marriage for a very long time confronts this sort of dead zone at a certain point and has to figure out how to weather the storm and what to do and how to make their life.
So that's coming out in the fall, you say?
And that's coming out in the fall.
Okay.
And and it's the first time I've had the opportunity to play a part that is of this scale. I mean, where the journey goes from the first frame of movie to last. I mean, I'm almost never off screen, and it was a very it was a major challenge, and she's a very complex character, so it was really...
It's interesting, as we get set to wrap up here, The Whip is a story about somebody who had to pretend to be somebody else, a woman pretending to be a man in a totally different time in the Old West. But for women who are in the acting trade, it's still a man's game, although I think things are getting better. But you're proving that there's no real boundary in terms of the types of roles you'll take on. If anybody just wants to just look at Sessions and look at your work in Deadwood, it's completely polar opposite. But I think it's a nice time, and independent film and television is waking up to the fact that actresses can not only shine but carry a role and be part of the center point of the piece.
Well, I think something interesting that's been written about is that film, in some ways, has traditionally been more of a male medium, and television has actually been skewing more and more female in terms of, if you think of things like Good Wife and all of that. It's really dictated by who watches, and because there's still the old trope that women are at home with the kids kind of thing. A lot of television caters to at least an imagined female audience, whereas movies tend to live or die by their big opening weekend splash that they make. For whatever reason, that's the business model, and so they go for this young male demographic. And there's more and more of a split in that way, and I know it's not dictated by some kind of judgment on the genders. It's really dictated by the market. And what would be great is if more and more women actually went out and saw movies. Movies might start to catch up.
Well, there's no question that you can you can lead the way with many of your colleagues whom I've had the great honor in chatting with over the years and having on the show. I think character actors, it's unfair to suggest that a character actor is anything less than a stellar lead actor, because really you are the guys and gals who do most of the heavy lifting. And
if you look at an incredibly prolific actor like Daniel Day-Lewis,
yeah.
I mean, he's so handsome and he's so extraordinary, but he's fundamentally a character actor, and that's
Absolutely.
when he first broke. When I think there was a year when he had My Beautiful Laundrette alongside of Unbearable Lightness of Being, alongside of A Room with a View. There were just these three films where he was absolutely, you thought he had a different physical dimension in each film. One he seemed sort of tall and awkward, and another he seemed wiry and small, and I mean just he seemed to absolutely morph, and I think people woke up to him through that. And I would love it if the same excitement was generated by women doing that. I think we need to get away from thinking of women as only being marketable if sort of they present themselves as one thing, especially when they're younger, which is to say a love object. I mean, I think there are many ways in which people like to see women, and so hopefully the two, the parts available to men and the parts available to women will start to become more similar over time. And we're moving as a culture. We're moving more and more in the direction of everybody of different genders and different races and just being human beings. And I'm excited by the trend, and I hope it continues.
Robin, before we let you go, first of all, thank you for your time, and you're so sweet to come on. And I'm thrilled for Karen, the author of The Whip, Karen Kondazian, because this is a great, great novel, 2012 USA Book News Award winner for Best Historical Fiction. And now you're doing the audiobook. It's available at audible.com.
And I want to say a couple things about the book, because I've talked an awful lot about myself, but
sure.
I think because Karen is an actress, she has a wonderful flair for character across the board, and it's not just that Charlie is a wonderfully developed character, Charlie Parkhurst, but all the surrounding characters are so colorful and so developed, and any number of them would be fun to play individually as an actor. There's a fantastic character of an Italian actress, and then there's all the almost Dickensian figures that surrounded. She used to be Charlotte before she became Charlie, but these sort of Dickensian figures that surrounded her during her childhood, and she paints a very rich tapestry of characters, and the book is so much fun for that reason. And there's lots of moments where you want to sort of laugh out loud, and other moments that are terribly moving.
Very touching.
Really, she really wrote it very passionately, and I think it makes a good read.
A good listen to as well.
Yeah.
Robin Weigert, what a delight to chat with you, and I wish you the best. And, of course, we still watch you trying to get those guys off of whatever they're charged with on Sons of Anarchy. We see you there.
Yes, let's hope they get into a lot of legal trouble this year.
Yeah, because we'd like to see Ali return. Thank you so much for your time. Say hello to Karen, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
That is one of our finest actresses, Robin Weigert. You know her from Deadwood and so many other great roles. We'll be back with so much more straight ahead on The Jordan Rich Show.